In case you are not aware, the next characters coming to the global version of Black Clover Mobile are Kahono and Kiato, and they will be dropping on the 4th of January, so just 4 days after New Year's. Now the question is, do you guys want to pull on this banner or do you want to save? So the very first thing is you probably want to save if you're free to play, but these are some fairly decent units, okay? So very first off, let's talk about Kahono. Kahono is a healer type character. She is a blue technique character, and what she's going to do is she's going to do continuous healing over time. Sounds really similar to another character we just got, right? But let's talk about her kit. So skill 1, Destructive Beat, fires mana in the form of a sound wave, dealing damage to a single target enemy, and at the same time it's going to grant the ally with the lowest HP continuous HP recovery equal to 4% of their maximum HP for 4 turns. That's fairly decent, right? Okay, it's just a normal skill 1. It's similar to the new Swimsuit Charmy skill 1. And then for skill 2, Rhythm Barrier. This one creates a barrier of song magic that encourages all allies, granting them a buff. So it's going to grant all allies a barrier equal to 14% of max HP for 2 turns. So if you thought the barrier meta was already annoying, it's about to get a whole lot worse. And then grants all allies increased defense level 2 for 2 turns. And then grants all allies increased HP recovery level 2 for 2 turns. Like, it could be really, really annoying, right? So she does similar things to Charmy, but then also gives a barrier and extra defense. So yeah, take that how you will. Take that how you will. Also, this one, not continuous recovery. That's the main difference. This one is just a one-time HP recovery of 30%. So that's what's different here. Whereas the primary skill is continuous recovery. And then for her special skill, Healing Lullaby, plays a beautiful melody using song magic, healing and buffing all allies. Grants all allies an HP recovery equal to 20% of max HP, and then grants all allies increased all attack level 2 for 2 turns. So in terms of this character so far, you might notice that she's very similar to the new Charmy, except for she has more utility in the sense that she's also going to be buffing attack, she's going to be giving barriers, and she's going to be increasing defense, right? That's what makes her a little bit different than Charmy. And then for the combined attack, it applies a buff to your partner, grants the partner an HP recovery equal to 20% of max HP, so that's kind of nice that she can heal on her combined attack if you want to. And then it also grants the partner increased all attack level 5 before the attack, and that is a 70% attack increase. So that's actually a pretty decent combined skill compared to what other healers have. Like, that's honestly not a bad combined skill. But overall, I would say if you're looking for a good healer, Charmy is technically a better healer. But if you're looking for someone to potentially take onto a PvP team with, like, maybe you're going to run Noelle, maybe you're going to run Rades, and then you want to run Kahono as well with the extra barrier, holy crap, you can annoy people to no end, right? It's just going to be the waiting game unless they have the ability to remove barriers. Now, there are characters that can remove barriers, like Season 1 Yami and Asta, they can remove barriers, so keep that in mind. So barriers aren't everything in this game if you know how to play around them, but I'm just saying, like, if you are running Kahono along with Noelle, along with Rades, it's going to be freaking annoying. But in terms of just overall healing as a healer, I would say technically Charmy is the better choice. So if you have Charmy, you don't need to pull on Kahono. You could technically pass on her unless you're just a collector, or unless you want that extra utility of barriers and stuff like that. Now, maybe you didn't get Noelle at this point, or maybe you're not going to get Noelle, maybe you're not going to get Charmy, then you might want to pull for Kahono, okay? That's just, it's up to you. She will be on a dual banner though, so you have a split chance between pulling her and pulling Kiato. If I'm saying his name right, I apologize if I'm not. So keep that in mind. You might go in on that banner and you might end up not even pulling her. So it is the risk you run. But then for her skill card, it's going to drastically change her skill 2 and make it better. So the passive that you get from it, besides changing skill 2, has a 35% chance of restoring 10 to 20% of all allies' maximum HP upon being hit by a crit, max 3 times per battle. Honestly, I think her skill card might be better than better than her. Like, the skill card is really, really good, and you can put this on any healer and get that effect, right? So that could be really useful on Charmy. It could be useful on Season 1 Mimosa. It's a really good skill card for a healer. So that's honestly solid, that if you just get hit, and it works up to 3 times. You get hit by 3 crits, then you're going to heal everybody's maximum HP. The thing is, not all healers are necessarily going to be able to survive this. Like Green Mimosa might not survive as well like when she's getting hit by 3 crits, she might not survive. However, like Charmy would definitely survive 3 crits because she has so much HP. So just keep that in mind. And then for her skills, before you only have these 3, which was the barrier, the increased defense, the increased HP recovery. And then after, you get an additional dispel debuff ×2. So that means she's going to remove a negative status effect like poison or whatever. So that's really nice as well. I don't know actually if dispel debuff, I assume it would. I assume it would get rid of like decreased mobility as well. So that could potentially help, I believe, with Julius, and Julius being annoying with him doing the time stop and the decreased mobility, because those should count as debuffs if I am correct. So that could potentially, like that particular skill, if you get the skill card and Kahono, she could be potentially very good and help you in the current meta to maybe climb in PvP if you have been struggling. So I would say she's actually pretty useful right now. But then you also have to take into account when you look at her, JP and KR right now with where they're at in their seasons, she's still A tier. That's pretty decent. That's not S tier though. That's not S plus tier. And so she's fallen off a little bit by that point, and she'll probably continue to fall off. So I don't know. Overall, not a terrible investment, but I would mainly not pull for her if you have Charmy, and if you don't have Charmy, then I would say it's more worth it to pull for her. Now, Kiato, on the other hand, let's talk about him. He is an attacker unit. He is also a blue type unit, and he is still S tier in KR and JP for PvE. He's a really good attacker for like taking on bosses and stuff like that. And then in PvP though, he is still A. So like Kiato is actually technically the better unit, which is weird to me because I felt like Kahono played a bigger part in the manga and the anime, but it's fine. And so let's talk about his skills. His first skill is called Cross Slash. Cross slashes an enemy with 2 swords, dealing damage. Upon having a buff, attacks after applying 15% increased damage to yourself. For this skill, it does not stack your damage upon having like multiple buffs. I wish it did, because that would make it so much better. That'd make his skill 1 go crazy. So like just having an extra 15% damage from a buff is like, it's okay. It's not the greatest for skill 1. Then skill 2, Swirling Torrent, slashes all enemies with rapidly spinning force, dealing damage. This is an AoE attack. Attack after applying a 10% increased crit rate buff to self for each buff affecting yourself. So you could have a bunch of like magic attack up buffs, damage buffs. You could maybe have like Sally on your team buffing you. And for each of those buffs you have on this character, it's going to increase his crit rate by 10%, like basically add a crit rate buff for each of those buffs to match it. So you can have a crap ton of buffs on this character all at once, having him do a massive amount of AoE damage. Like it's crazy how much AoE damage you can do if you build like basically a nuking team that's just going to buff this guy into oblivion. So that's why he is going to be so good in PvE. Now, of course, in PvP, the reason this doesn't work as well is because barriers are a thing, and you're going to struggle to get through the barriers. And if your 1-turn nuke doesn't work out, well, then you're just kind of sitting there with a bunch of buffers who are easily killed, and yeah, you can't do a whole lot. So hopefully that explains why he's good in PvE and not so much in PvP. And then for his special skill, Dancing Vortex, slashes an enemy with a sword in a dancing motion, dealing damage. This is a single target attack. Upon having 2 or more buffs, the skill will be a guaranteed crit. Very easily achievable. The thing is, he doesn't really buff himself other than like with the skill. Upon having buffs, he gives himself more buffs of crit rate, but like, yeah, so you almost have to have like another character to give buffs. And then attack after applying a 15% increased accuracy buff to self for each buff affecting yourself. Once again, you already have to have buffs to get the extra buff. So it's weird, but yeah, if you have characters that are going to buff him, he can be a very, very, very strong PvE unit. And then his combined attack performs a combined attack with your partner, dealing damage to an enemy if an enemy is taking continuous damage. Applies 30% increased damage to yourself before attacking. Okay, so I mean, it's okay. I don't really like his combined attack. I don't know what scenarios you would ever really use it over his other skills, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And then, of course, you have his passives down here and stuff like that. So we got to talk about, of course, his unique passive. And I think I forgot to talk about Kahonos too, so I'll go back and talk about that here in a second. But for the general passive, applies 5% increased damage dealt. And then for the unique passive, applies Exciting Dance buff to self when receiving a buff. So what does Exciting Dance do? It's a 5% increased endurance 5% increased block. After Exciting Dance reaches 5 stacks, then you gain Idol Debut for 2 turns. And what Idol Debut is going to do is it's a 30% chance, 30% increased endurance, 30% increased block, and the big one, 50% increased damage. So this guy will stack over time as you add more buffs to him. And then let's say you have that 50% increased damage plus a bunch of extra crit rate plus a bunch of extra damage buffs, and he does an AoE. I'm just saying this guy is an insane AoE nuker. He is really, really good. So if you want someone who's going to help you like easily clear PvE content, this is the guy for you. He's absolutely insane. And we'll talk about a skill card here in a second. Let me go back to Kahono and look at her passive skills, because I just kind of glossed over them. I didn't really look at them because they don't do a whole lot, right? But her basic passive skill applies 5% reduced damage taken self, which is nice, gives a healer more survivability. And then her unique passive applies 10% increased max HP to self. So just, once again, more survivability. Like I said, it's crazy to me that they just made Kiato so good. And I feel like Kahono just like a slightly different Charmy, you know? They didn't put as much into her. So I don't know, it's just weird to me. I felt like Kahono played a bigger role, but it's okay. Moving on for the skill card for Kiato. So the passive is a Dancing Determination. Before attacking, there's a 40 to 60% chance to obtain a 20 to 40% increased crit damage buff, which is insane because you're getting that increased crit rate plus whatever other buffs you're adding to the character. That's really, really good. That, like, he has so much potential to hit so hard. It's crazy. And then for the before, you of course had the increased crit rate for each buff. And then after, you are now able to dispel dot. What is dot? It's damage over time. So like poison, burn, whatever. You'll get rid of whatever the enemy has put on you. And then if you dispel a dot, you gain 1 stack of Exciting Dance, which means it's just going to help give you extra endurance and defense, and then it's going to help you get to that idle status faster where you get that extra damage, right? So honestly, his skill card is really pretty decent. I like this skill card a lot. Before attacking, there's a 40 to 60% chance to increase to obtain a 20 to 40% increased crit damage buff. That would be insanely good on like Red Yami. Oof, this skill card is good for multiple people, right? So it's a really good skill card. Honestly, Kiato is the one to pull for if you're looking for a good PvE clearer. Kahono, only pull for her if you're looking for a healer that because you lack Charmy. If you have Charmy, I wouldn't really worry about her too much. I think this guy's not going to be necessary, but if you're looking for a nuke character, maybe you're lacking some capabilities in the nuking department, then this is going to be the guy for you. He's absolutely insane. I think his AoE attack is crazy, and you know, make your own judgments from there. Personally, I will probably do the step up banner for him. He does have a step up banner that's separate from the dual rate banner, and it guarantees his skill card and him. And I feel like that's a lot better than pity, in my opinion. So that's probably what I'll do. But let me know what you guys are going to do down in the comments. And if this video helped you decide whether you're going to summon or not, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.